All right.
I'm sitting here.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? Thank you all for coming. This is a little bit different. This is
Sorry about
the
that.
beginning of a Bible study, but you don't have to be part of the Bible study to be here for this. It's a one-shot deal, kind of standalone, but it'll lend itself into the Bible study that we're going to do after. So I'm going to start with Revelation. That's what we're talking about tonight. And then I'll give some practical things about the Bible study. And so I don't know if you're planning on it or not. You're very welcome to slip out if you don't want to hear how we're going to divide up our weeks and all that. So thanks for coming. And I am recording this too. Just there are a couple people that wanted to see but weren't able to. So I want to start out with this question. You have 30 seconds to answer this. You can talk to the person next to you. You can keep it to yourself, whatever you want. What is the singular, the most important invention or idea in human history?
Telephone.
30 seconds.
The wheel. The wheel?
30 seconds. You don't have to come up with consensus. You just
Fire.
Human compassion.
Fire.
In 30 years?
Human compassion.
Well,
30 seconds. You got 30 seconds to figure it out. Forever. Yep. Anytime in human
It
history.
would be a wheel.
Most important invention or idea.
Probably right.
He said that we became human when the caveman didn't become.
All right.
I'd say car.
Car. Okay. Did you come up with something?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead at 1, 2, 3. Say your answer. Ready? 1,
Wheel.
2,
Wheel.
3. What's your answer?
Window.
Okay. A lot of different answers, right? That's okay. I did a survey of some friends and stuff, and I just started asking them. I asked 12 people, I got 11 answers. So I had 2 that said medicine, or some kind of variation of medicine, but these were their answers, right? This is a really hard question, right? We're not going to agree because there's so many factors that are part of this, right? We're kind of kidding over here for a second about microwaves being but it really is a huge time saver and opportunity for those that don't have access to the cooking stoves and stuff. It's a game changer, and you could make an argument that it is one of them or the most important invention of all time. You could. You also make the fire is or any of these. I mean, there's none that are better than the other. And the reason that I wanted to start here is because when we go to Revelation, we can all make the argument that this is the most important book, this is the least important book. This is the book that's going to revolutionize and change Christianity. This is something that shouldn't even been in the Bible, right? And everything in between. There's so much baggage with this book, more than any other in all of the Bible, that I want to lay that out. That there is not a simple answer here. There isn't. And all of us are going to come with different perspectives. Some of us may have never ever cracked open Revelation. Some of us may have dug in there every single day. Everything in between. Some of us have been hurt by the book of Revelation. This is the key to unlocking how Christianity is supposed to be, right? And we're all going to be on different perspectives there. My point is that as we're doing the study, and actually even as we're doing today, we need to create a space where it is okay if people don't see it exactly as you do. Okay? So they may see it as sacred and as valuable and as integral to our faith as you do. They may see it as, I'm not sure about this and I don't understand it or whatever. So as we're doing today and as we're doing, as we're doing the talk in the next few weeks, I really want that to be a part of this. We are not going to reach consensus tonight or any time. As the things that I'll show you, we will not agree on just about everything that I show you here tonight. So we will not come to consensus. We will not be able to change each other's minds. What we need to be is open and to listen to the Spirit and how it informs and speaks to you today. Okay, that's the groundwork I want for this conversation going forward today and the weeks to come. Okay. So with that said, 2 more things real quick that I want to do on this slide. One, it is revelation, singular. It is not revelations. It's never plural. It's singular, revelation. And two, I wanted to give you a quick story. When I started seminary, the very, very first week, I called my mom to check in and see how it was going, and she was living next door to my grandma before she passed. And grandma was there, and grandma wanted to talk to me, and grandma never said hello to me. She picked up the phone and she said, "So Scott, how's your Revelation class going?" I said, "Grandma, I'm not taking a Revelation class. I've got Old Testament, I've got philosophy, I've got speech, I've got a class in monasticism." She said, "Then why are you bothering going to seminary?" Okay. To my grandma, that was the entirety of Christian faith encapsulated. More important than the Gospels, more important than just anything else, was understanding and plumbing through Revelation. And she couldn't understand why that wasn't the same for me, and that's why I wasn't studying that completely. Okay? So, like I said, there are a lot of different perspectives out there. We're going to honor and create a space where everyone has a voice and everyone's perspectives on this as we wrestle with this text. This is not an easy text, folks. Not at all. So we're gonna create a space where we all can roll our eyes and cry and frustrate and whatever as we step verse by verse, chapter by chapter. Okay. So tonight I want to talk about three different things to kind of frame Revelation itself, because there's a lot of baggage with this book too. I want to talk about what is apocalyptic literature, what makes that special, and why is that? Why is Revelation written in apocalyptic literature, and what does that mean, and where does it come from, and what other examples are there in the Bible or in ancient texts? I want to talk about the author, John of Patmos, okay, and the interesting conflict and conversation about him. And I want to talk about the church's relationship to the book of Revelation too. It has never been easy and fun and everybody's excited and here it goes. It has always been a book of challenge and a book of diverse opinions since the very beginning. So those are the three things we're going to talk about tonight, okay? And then I will we'll step into some of the practical stuff for the class itself, but this is what we're going to do tonight. So first, I want to start with John of Patmos, okay? He is the author of the book of Revelation. He gives himself the credit in the top that he did it. And there is debate on whether or not John of Patmos is also one of Jesus' disciples, John the Apostle, right? And there is discussion, and there has been discussion since the 2nd century on both ways. Okay? There is no definitive answer. So, this is from a writer named Eusebius. He's commenting on a writer by an early bishop named Papias. Papias' writings are lost. We don't have them anymore. So we only have people that have quoted him instead. We don't have the source itself. So, but he's talking about John being enumerated twice. There's the evangelist and John the presbyter, he called him. And that it was probable that Revelation was written by the second one, the presbyter. So there was one side that said, no, these are two different people.
What's a presbyter?
Person that goes to Presbyterian church.
Oh.
I don't remember what the exact word is. I probably should know what it means. Does anybody on the Presbyterian table know what it means?
Anybody got the Google?
I will look. Yeah, somebody Google it real quick. There is a
I'm on my
specific word. It's a religious word. I don't remember specifically what it means, and I don't want to do that. So Eusebius was saying two different people. Justin Martyr was writing in the 2nd century, said they were the same person. Okay? And he said, a man named John, one of the apostles, he wrote the book of Revelation, basically is what he's saying, paraphrasing a little bit. Which John was it? I don't know. I don't know, and we're not going to figure that out in this class or any time in our lifetimes. So I can tell you that in the early church, it was not a consensus, but it leaned more favorably into it being one person that did both. More theologians thought that than thought that they were two separate people. Today, most theologians believe they're two separate people, but there's still some that believe. Or one, I read a paper that a woman was making an argument on why they're the same person.
They lived at the same time, they were,
We don't know. So that I'm going to come to dates in a little bit, but we don't know for sure when they were. So yes,
So looking at all the different definitions in the back of my Bible,
yes.
I'm guessing it has something to do with a person who could or had prophecy as a
Okay.
gift.
That would make sense given the text of it. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for looking at Cold Star for you.
Oh, thanks. I needed that today.
They didn't even live
yeah.
in the same area, did they?
Well,
It's a cedar.
Patmos is an island off of Greece. John the evangelist, or the apostle John, was in the Jerusalem area, but did he go there
Oh,
after?
okay.
Was he?
I thought it was farther away.
Yeah. So that debate still goes on. Is it the same? Is it not the same? I did Google because I was looking for some other information, and it was almost exactly 50-50 on every page that I read, whether it was they're the same or they're different. We don't know. Okay. Now, some of the reasons to say that they weren't, because I'm more familiar with those than to say that they are. But some of the reasons say they weren't. One is that in Revelation, John of Patmos gives his name. He says, I, John of Patmos, and this is my testimony, or whatever. In the gospel and in the letters, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, he never signs his name. Not once. We assume it's John, and we assume that the letters of John are connected to the gospel of John because they use the same language. There's a lot of talk about God being love and light, and very similar phrasing between the letters and the gospel that you don't find in the book of Revelation. It uses much different language. The book of Revelation sort of references and alludes to some Old Testament scripture, particularly Ezekiel, Daniel, the Psalms, and Isaiah. The Gospel of John specifically quotes scripture. Is that a clue? I don't know. Another is that in Revelation, there's this sense of an imminent return of Jesus. He's coming soon. He's going to be here. He's going to fix things. Things are going to be right. The Gospel of John doesn't really have that sense of urgency and that sense of immediacy with Jesus coming back again. It's a different theology between the two. And so some argue that that's part of it too. Those are reasons against. Reasons for is they were really close in time, but we don't know how exactly close in time. And I'll talk about the timeline here in just a second, but it's possible. But it's also possible John's a common name. So you gotta make your own decision on that.
Scott,
Yes.
I've been on Patmos,
Okay.
and they claim that John was the Apostle John, and he did write the book of Revelation, and he did write it while on Patmos.
I cannot refute
Well,
that.
if I were a travel agent, and I were on Patmos, that's what I'd publicize,
Right. And it's very true.
I wonder if it were the same person, maybe like the person I am at 20 and the person I am at 40 would write absolutely different.
Right.
So maybe it was just a different stage in his life, because I can only assume that when I'm 60, I would write different than I do now.
Yeah. That is another very plausible possibility. It really is.
I mean, especially since it's the last one, like maybe it was the last thing he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Right.
Just
Well,
guessing.
it probably would have been. So turning to dates real quick. This is about one of the only things that modern scholars kind of have a consensus on, is they think it was about 95 CE when it was written. If you go back into history, there isn't a consensus. And it's kind of funny that Irenaeus, who was another 2nd century writer, actually quoted at 2 different times that the book of Revelation was. He in one letter, he said, I'm convinced it was during the Emperor Domitian's reign, and another time he said, I'm convinced it was during Trajan's reign.
Oh.
So, there's others that have thought it was during Nero and Vespasian. I don't know my Caesars very well. But most believe it was written at 95 CE, which is technically possible If he was a young man when he started following Jesus, he would have been 70-ish when, he would have written this, if we were going with that. So that does kind of point towards it could.
That's pretty old for that time, isn't it?
It's kind of old for that time, but it's not impossible.
I was gonna say, 70 is, then is different than 70 now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, it's not Methuselah, but
No, not Methuselah. And Methuselah, all that time, never wrote one paragraph, so.
Yeah, but he was busy begetting.
He was very busy.
No time for writing.
So, it was probably
Oh,
written
boy.
95, during the Domitian's, during reign. That's really when people kind of think it was. But again, we don't know. Okay. So I want to talk about apocalyptic literature, okay? And I'm going to use this verse from Revelation 17:3 to kind of get us started. And it talks about a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, covered with blasphemous names that had 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay? That's one of the marks of apocalyptic literature, is very otherworldly images and beasts and things that they're seeing. It's a very different, excuse me, space. Hold on to that for a second. Because what apocalyptic really means is revealing divine mysteries. It's a literature style that, just like in the Bible, that has poetry or has law or has history. Apocalyptic literature was a style of literature to try and give hope to people in times when they were feeling overwhelmed and they couldn't go anymore. And it was always to, hey, it's going to be okay, because just around the corner, this is going to happen. The 2 best that we have in our Bible are Daniel, the end of Daniel, chapter 7 through 12, and the book of Revelation. Ezekiel kind of dips into that a little bit. Isaiah, you could make an argument, I guess. But we don't have a lot of apocalyptic literature, but there was a lot of apocalyptic literature. Okay, just because it didn't make it into our Bible, there was quite a bit at that time.
Was it like a Greek, kind of like, was it a fad?
No, it was a way for people to write in an oppressed situation. So
Okay.
think about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was fine as long as you did 2 things. You paid your taxes and never talked bad about Rome. If you messed up either of those, it was over. You were done. And swift justice. So you couldn't write speaking to power at all in that time. You had to come up with a way to do it that was plausible deniability. I didn't write about Nero. I wrote about a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns.
Like a cipher.
Yeah. And so that's part of it. More, again, trying to think about bringing hope is the other. So Daniel 7, I just grabbed some of the pieces that were there. And if I didn't tell you this was Daniel 7, I could convince you this came out of Revelation. Right? It is very similar style writing. This was written about 200 BCE. And what was happening then, the Greeks were in power. And the Greeks were kind of oppressing the Jews at the time. So how do you speak to that? How do you speak to that power? And so people have argued what those 4 beasts are and where they came from. And one's the Assyrians, one's the Babylonians, one's the Persians, one's the Greeks. I don't know enough apocalyptic things to give you the exact definitions of them. But this is definitely, as you can see, had 10 horns, had 4 wings, had teeth like a bear, wings of an eagle, was a lion. And they're usually coming out of the sea. In Jewish literature, the sea was a time of chaos. It was a space that was separate from God. It was God ordered the land, but the sea represented chaos and disorder and confusion and scariness. So anything comes out of the sea, well, that makes sense, right? Because it's coming out of
And it's
chaos. So you'll see some of those. And if you know the symbology, if you know the meaning of numbers, Jews were very good about assigning meaning to numbers that we just don't have today. If I told you my lucky number was 7, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense, or if I said, I didn't stop on the 13th floor because I was worried, you'd say, oh, yeah, okay. But after that, that's all we got, right? Every number in early Jewish writings is often a message, and there's more meaning to it. It may be literal, but it's more like it's also telling you something. So it's not a coincidence that the Hebrews wandered in the desert for 40 years. Noah was on the ark for 40 days and 40 nights. Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days. 40 is a time of spiritual discovery and spiritual conquest and getting through a spiritual challenge. So did those things happen exactly 40 days? I don't know. But though I believe those things happen, and that's what's more important to me than whether it was 35 days or 40 days or anything like that. That doesn't, I'm okay with that.
But you think that the Apostle John, he never wrote any type of, what you said?
Apocalyptic.
Yeah, he was never apocalyptic.
Not speaking so much, but he does get kind of mystical and fanciful when you start talking about the Holy Spirit.
Okay.
So you could, again, make a stretch there that he was more in tune with the spiritual side of his religion that compared to Mark, for example, who was just, this is it, and off we go. Disciples didn't get it, and next chapter. Where John did have a sense of a little more imaginative and more expansive in his theology, specifically around the Holy Spirit, that maybe the others didn't. Here's another one. This comes from 2nd Esdras, chapter 11. Who's read 2nd Esdras before? Nobody. Okay. I really hadn't either until I did this. However, it's in my Bible. It is not in the Catholic Bible. It was in the Catholic Bible until the 1500s, and they pulled it out. But this was another example of apocalyptic literature that was talking about, I don't know what it's talking about, but again, if you pulled that out and I didn't tell you where it's from, I could make a convincing argument it came from Revelation. This was written about the same time as the book of Revelation, okay? It is still revered in some spaces. Like I said, it was part of the Catholic Bible until the Council of Trent in 1545 or 46 or something like that. And I don't know why they specifically pulled it out.
So where did you get it from?
It's in the study Bible. So this book has apocryphal books, the books that are in the Old Testament Catholic Bible that aren't in the Protestant Catholic Bible. And then it has some other deuterocanonical books that were important at different times, or maybe in like the Greek Orthodox Bible or one of the others.
It's like the Book of Mary and the Book of...
It might, I don't think that, but yes, that kind of thing. Yeah. So this is just a quick rabbit hole. Every Bible is not the same, okay? It's real easy to spot between the Protestants and the Catholics, but even as you go beyond that, it's not the same. Greek Orthodox is different than Roman Catholic, and the Ethiopian Coptic is different than all the others, and sometimes they add some, sometimes they remove some. They're all basically the same, but they're not. And so this was another book that was written there, again, trying to speak hope to the situation that was happening. Now, I couldn't find in the center here, this is another book that was written in Greek right around the same time as the book of Revelation. It's called the Sibylline Oracles, and there's 16 or 17 books. They're all small. Really, we'd call them chapters, but they call them books. And it was well read until about the 5th century, and then the church said, no, you got to burn them. And so most copies went away. There's fragments here and there, but most of them are gone. So just throwing a couple things at you. In 69, Nero commits suicide. Okay, he sticks a knife into his neck and says it's fate, and he kills himself. It was after like the 4th time he tried to kill himself, but he finally got it right.
Like his bird Rome.
Yeah. In book 4 of the Sibylline Oracles, Emperor Nero, and I don't have a quote, I'm sorry, but they're basically saying that Emperor Nero didn't die. That he was able to survive his injuries. He went out east, rallied the people in Asia, brought them back to overcome Rome and get them out of power. And he becomes kind of an antichrist figure. Okay? If you look at Revelation 13:3, it's talking about one of the beast's heads having a fatal wound that had been healed. Some scholars think they're both talking about Nero there. Okay? Because, well, he would have died, but this isn't a fatal wound, he's still there. And so is Nero the Antichrist that they're talking about in the book of Revelation? I don't know. But that's another piece there. So there's this whole genre of literature is confusing, it's messy, it uses examples and symbology and pictures that we just don't use. But think of it as always trying to bring hope to people that are oppressed. People that are just struggling and they don't know how to get out of it. And so instead of me telling you to overthrow the government, I'm giving you a coded message that gives you that hope. Okay? That's what an apocalyptic book is. And one more example. Babylon, right? Babylon is used quite a bit in the book of Revelation. It's kind of an easy example to point to as Rome itself instead of using the word Rome. And it was done quite a bit in Jewish literature for two reasons. The Babylonians burned the temple in 586 BCE. Rome burned the temple in 70 CE, right? So 2 Kings is talking about Babylon and setting fire to the temple. That's well documented on lots of sources. But if you go to Revelation 17:9, it's talking about, it's the same beast that I showed you at the beginning, with the scarlet beast with the blasphemy names on top and the 7 heads, 10 horns. On the beast's back is the whore of Babylon. Okay? And it goes on to talk just a little bit later about the 7 hills, which is a nickname for Rome. Rome is the city of 7 hills.
Okay.
So, is it the same?
7 heads, 7, yeah.
Right. So, is it the same? Is that what the heads are referring to? Or are the heads referring to 7 emperors? Or, I don't know. What I'm saying is, in Revelation especially, it's not always as black and white as it might seem. Okay? There's always some hidden depths to it. There's always some other meaning there. There's always some symbolism that maybe we're not keying in on. And that makes it harder for us to know what are they really saying and what do they really mean. But that's something we have to wrestle with in this class. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's kind of how apocalyptic literature works. And then there's another image of that woman riding the beast as well. So, any questions about apocalyptic literature?
Would you say that the Chronicles of Narnia tends to be that type of literature?
You could make some arguments that Aslan is actually the Christ figure and things like that. Similar. I wouldn't call it apocalyptic because it's not necessarily speaking to an oppressed people, but certainly that allegorical use of other images and things that aren't what they really mean, for 100%. 100%, yeah.
You know, it's interesting because you read the book of Revelation, and it seems real dark, and I can't think of it as uplifting, but if it's in code, and they understand the difference, that makes a lot of sense. Because I wouldn't, if somebody was going through a bad time, I wouldn't tell them, read the book of Revelation.
Right. No. So to give a 30-second, John is giving some specific churches encouragement or constructive criticism. And then he goes into this stuff. And in that stuff, people know that things are going to happen and things are going to get bad before they get better. But if you can get through this, if you can get to the end, then God will be dwelling with you right here on earth. And that's what makes Revelation so powerful, is that you can, if you can get through to the end there and get to that. So, yeah. We don't often put a lot of Revelation quotes on pillows. We just don't. So if anyone wants to cross-stitch Revelation 17 on a pillow, about the whore of Babylon riding the scarlet beast.
I've had a friend.
Somebody would
put that on
appreciate
the
that.
snap. I think we should put it on.
Yeah, right.
It's usually not very
My wife
nice,
stitch
so
up a
maybe.
pillow.
Oh, yeah, right.
So the last
Stitch up something
piece
like
to
that.
this that I wanna talk about is what's the church's relationship to Revelation, okay? And the best answer I can give you is it's complicated at the beginning, it was complicated in the middle, and it's still complicated now. Okay. We're gonna start with this guy. This is Bishop Athanasius. And his big claim to fame in 360, 370, somewhere around there, is he sat down and decided what the New Testament was going to be. And the very last book he picked was Revelation. But before that, you had all these bishops in all these big cities. You had Antioch and Jerusalem and Alexandria and everywhere else. The bishops would tell the people what they should read at that point. Okay? Hey, we've got in our library, we've got these letters from Paul. You should read those. We have a book called The Shepherd of Hermas. You should read that book. Or the Didache, you should read that book. And so then they each would kind of decide what their own books were going to be. But it wasn't until this guy, who was kind of a bully, actually, that went to a council and he said, no, we need to standardize, and these are the 27. And it was right to the end on whether or not Revelation was going to be accepted. But he was persuasive enough that it became part of our canon, our collection of the Bible. But it was not one of the ones that they were jumping at.
So are there potentially more gospels, more people who wrote about Jesus and they were just like, yeah, but I didn't like how this guy writes?
Yes. So there's probably another dozen or so that we know about. Gospel of Judas, Gospel of Mary, Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of others.
How did they get kicked out?
Couple reasons. One, they didn't necessarily line up with the other four, the core four. So they may have had a weird idea that just didn't jive with the core message of Jesus. The Gospel of Judas is kind of one of those. He comes off as a real swell guy. Yeah, he does.
Imagine.
It wasn't written by him, but it was written in his perspective. So that's part of it. Part was accessibility. You know, how many times were people reading the Gospel of Mark versus I'll just keep it on Judas, on the Gospel of Judas, okay? People were getting enriched and they were getting fed by the Gospel of Mark. No one's really picking up on the Gospel of Judas. Let's kind of push that one aside and not have it as so available.
Did they leave Mary out because she was a woman?
I'm not willing to go down that conspiracy. Not on tape. The third is some of them were a little bit redundant. So the Gospel of Thomas was round and widely. It's just a collection of sayings, and a lot of those sayings are already recorded in the four Gospels. So they kind of, well, why do we need this if we've got all those sayings? There's a couple things in there that weren't in the other. So that's kind of how they made that decision, which ones to pick and which ones not to. Sometimes it was because they were anti-Orthodox thinking. They were just so far out from what the Christian church had decided was, you know, where they believed and understood Christ to be and to dwell in our role as Christians, that they were too far and they can't be there. And there were some that were fantastically wonderful that it just didn't make the cut, like the Didache and the Shepherd of Hermas. The Didache is really like an instruction manual on how to run a church. And so it's got directions on how to do communion, how to do baptism, what to teach people. And it's a fantastic book, and where people were reading it till the 1400s or so, when the printing press really kind of kicked off, and it just kind of fell out from there. But it was an important book. Think of it more like Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream or Letter to the Birmingham Jail. Both are very important pieces of literature. They just don't quite make the cut for the Bible. But could they? There's some wisdom there. But no, it doesn't make the cut because of this reason, this reason, and this reason.
Okay.
So
So are you saying that man decided what was going to go into the Bible?
you could say that. You could also say that man was divinely inspired to pick those books of the Bible.
That's what I.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, just to continue on the segue a little bit, the main difference between the Catholic Bible and the Christian Bible and the Jewish Bible is the Old Testament. Our New Testaments are the same, it's the Old Testament that's different. And I think there's 9 books in the Catholic Bible that aren't in the Protestant and the Jewish, what they call, or what we call the Old Testament.
Would you say that one more time?
There are 9 books in the Roman Catholic Bible that aren't in our Old Testament. Those are the books of the Apocrypha that aren't there. The books of Maccabees, for example, are not in our Bible, but are in the Roman Catholic Bible. And that comes down to when they were getting ready to decide what the Bible is going to be for the Old Testament. Martin Luther, they didn't have Hebrew copies of those books. They only had Greek copies of those books. And they said, these books are fine, but we're not going to call them Bible. So they went off of that. And there's a whole bit about the Septuagint, which was translating books, and that's a whole hour in itself. But there is a difference there. And so, yeah. Now, just real quick, the book of Maccabees, the one that's not in the Hebrew Bible, is where the story of Hanukkah comes from. The Festival of Lights is the story of Maccabees that's recorded in this other book, so they still read it, they still venerate it, they just don't call it scripture. Okay. So again, like that letter to Birmingham jail.
Are most of these books available still?
Absolutely, yep. If you, like this Bible here has just about all of it has all the ones I mentioned except the Sibylline Oracles, and you can get them online too. There's records there of them as well. So Athanasius, he's the one that really punched through at the end and said, these are the books we're going to have. And Revelation was on the chopping block, right at the beginning there. If we hop to the Protestant Reformation real quick and the Reformers, and they've got a chance to do that, Martin Luther was quoted as saying, you know what? That book is neither apostolic or prophetic. I don't like it. He didn't take it out, but that was his comments. John Calvin wrote a commentary on every single book of the Bible except Revelation. Wouldn't touch it. I don't know if that means anything, if you ran out of time, but the man wrote a lot, so I don't think he ran out of time. And then Zwingli was another theologian at that time that was rather prominent, rather important. He said, that's the book of the Bible. Okay. So from the beginning, from the Protestant Reformation, Revelation's always been on that edge. What do we do with it? How do we use it? How does it inform and shape us as Christians? And our understanding and the way we're using Revelation now is a new construct. It is not the construct that's been used for 2,000 years or 1,900 years or whatever the math would be. Okay. Today we kind of fall into one of these 4 ways of looking at the book of Revelation, and the most common is that it describes future events. Okay, that this is a blueprint, this is a plan, this is what's going to happen, step by step by step, here's how it's going to go. And that's called a millennialist, or a futurism perspective. By far, that is the most common of those things. Probably 90% of all Christians, if they have an opinion on Revelation, that's the one they're going to fall into. The other 3 are there, though, that it's an ideal, it's all an allegory of good versus evil. It's not necessarily historical events or future events, and everything in between. But millennialists, 90% easy. And I would bet that most of us have all or some millennialists in us at some point once we think about Revelation. But I want to stop and I want to close with this last piece here. So this is Revelation 21 through 6, and it is talking about a time that Satan is going to be thrown into prison for 1,000 years. There's going to be peace, but then he's going to come out for a little while, and then he'll be re-put into the hell, and that'll be the end of him. And so there are 2 really important schools of thought with this. The premillennialists and the postmillennialists. And one group says that this is this is going to be exactly how it's going to be. 1,000 years, he's going to come out for a little bit, and then that's the end. The other group, which is the postmillennialist, was the dominant way to read Revelation from about 1850 to 1920. Okay? So for a good 70 years of our American history and our American Christianity, that was the way that you read Revelation. And the postmillennialists said, okay, for us to have Christ come, we've got to create 1,000 years, a golden age, 1,000 years of peace and Christian ethics, and a space where goodness abounds. And then Christ will come and we'll take it. And it was in that time that you had things like abolitionism and no alcohol, and the social gospel, which brought forth Salvation Army and the YMCA and Red Cross really taking off. The missionary zeal of that early 1900s, we got to get the word out so that people know, so we can create that Christian utopia. That all comes from the post-millennium reading of Revelation, 1850 to 1920 or so. 1920, we started flipping and we started doing what's called the premillennialism. We had a literal reading. And in that space between then and now, we had one figure that was transcendent for our understanding of Revelation, and that was Billy Graham. And Billy Graham was a premillennialist. It's a literal interpretation, and that really defined the evangelism movement in the United States, and it defined our understanding of that particular single teeny passage. Which is right? I have no idea. None. I don't. I could make an argument to read it literal. I could make an argument to not read it literal. Because if you say, it says with Christ 1,000 years, it doesn't say Christ is here for 1,000 years. Right? I'm with Christ right now. But that's different than Christ being here, literally, in flesh and blood. Right? So you can make an argument for both of those. And that's the thought I want to leave you at. And this is just one piece of this monster book. It's not easy. It is not straightforward. And it is not something that we have agreed on ever in the history of Christianity. We have always had people on both sides of every way that you can slice this up.
So how does this leave the huge series of Left Behind books?
Yeah, well,
Because
they
it
were
has to
very
be Revelation.
Mhm.
So-
They came out of that premillennialism philosophy, the evangelical movement of the United States, that literal reading of that, and as such, they wrote their books as a very literal, it's fiction, but they relied heavy on Revelation to come up with their language, and they follow different events that are happening in there to make that happen. And they might be right. I don't know. And I'll make my head spin trying to decide. So for me, where I rest in this is not in the specifics, not in the up and downs, not in whether the whore was on a red beast or if that was symbolism or literal or whatever. What matters to me is that the end of the story is written. That God will come back, that God will be with us in a way that we can't begin to understand. And that's where I stop with my personal revelation digging in. And it is okay if that's not you. It is okay if you want to really dig into the nuts and bolts and tweak and say, okay, well, the flood that we had before, is that related to this here, or the earthquake or whatever, and try and read those signs, please. And that's what I'm saying with this study, is we are not going to agree.
How different our Bibles would be if we didn't end with Revelation. Maybe if they hadn't pondered putting it in or where to put it, and that is the end,
Right.
you know?
Right? If you read Mark really kind of abruptly says, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much hope at Mark until there's some extra verses that we think added later to give some hope there. We've got Paul saying Christ is coming soon, but it's only Revelation that really spells out what that means when Christ comes back and how reshape society, humanity, and the earth itself into the creation that God wants. So there is, yeah.
But it's kind of like a movie. They added all that characters and, you know, three heads and, you know, all that science fiction stuff we think, you know, maybe to catch your attention more?
Maybe.
Who's they added? When they were writing, yeah.
John
you know,
of Patmos
John.
wrote.
Oh, I think it's of God, but it's more of a way to catch, you know, your attention and say, it's gonna be bad. These things kept you up at night. This is actually gonna happen.
Having
It means we're all
studied
in
that-
trouble.
Having
Doesn't-
studied that, go
Well, are
ahead, Diane,
we?
sorry.
Does it mean we're all in trouble? I mean, with your opinion of what you're
Well,
telling us.
Christ we are.
Well, we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
Yeah,
But with Christ, there's new life and new.
I know, but it's very confusing. I mean, as much as you've studied and gone through school and know.
But I'm not
You
an
can't
expert.
come out and
I
tell us.
am not an expert.
No.
I make that very, very clear. I'm still a struggler, just like everybody else. And I'm still wrestling with, and scripture speaks to me different one day than it does the next, depending on the crises I'm going through or the time I need my pride kicked down a little bit or whatever along the way. And that's the beauty of scripture. And that's, to me, what makes it living, is that it continually speaks to us in new
Well,
ways.
how important is it that we find out the truth? Can we find out the truth?
We won't, I'm speaking for me, not for the church or anybody else. I don't think you'll know the truth until A, it happens and it's plain and clear, or B,
Okay.
you're in heaven and you ask God yourself.
Okay,
See, and I think God wants us to know.
I can accept
Why
that.
it's in there.
Could be, right? And I don't know. And that's where we're coming in with this, Jan, is we gotta wrestle with it, and we gotta struggle with it.
We studied this a couple of times in depth. And come out of it just as and more confused than when we went in. But I think as a group, and if there's 20 of us in the group, there'll be 20 different opinions on something.
Absolutely.
I think you have to relax and listen, let him tell you what he wants you to get, and it may be totally different than he wants Jan to get out of it.
Right.
But Jan's interpretation is no more right or wrong than my interpretation. It's what he put in us. We have to keep that in mind as we go through it, that we don't get bitter with each other. You better leave it, because that's what I think it says. And that happens. It
Right,
doesn't
it
always
does.
come to surface, but it
It
happens.
does.
Yeah.
It does, and that's really what I wanted to frame, and thank you for saying that, that's, we can't, not with this book, we can't. Oh, Elliot raising his hand.
I feel like the only truth that you need to really worry about is Jesus. Like,
Yep.
I said a little prayer before I said that, so I would say the right thing, but I don't know that you need to have truth out of this. You know, I think the truth is Jesus, and that's what you need to
Well, he
I
tells
agree.
us that.
Mhm.
I am the way, the truth,
right,
Yeah.
and the life.
right, absolutely.
A friend once said, Jesus said it, I believe it, and that's enough.
Yeah,
And I thought, how profound.
That is the fourth time this
How
week, and it is
profound.
Tuesday, that I have heard someone say Jesus is enough.
Why
Maybe
would
you're
this-
supposed to,
ever have come to be like it is. I just don't get it. The whole this whole revelation.
so let's think of it from a different perspective. You could say that Revelation was written for a time and a place and a people that aren't necessarily us, right? So there's still wisdom from us to glean from it. There's still our self-reflection that we can do in that. There's still hope in it for us, but we're not the people it was originally written for. Just like 1 Corinthians, right? You and I, we are never, ever, well, I shouldn't say ever, but never, ever going to have to worry about how we're going to deal with meat that's already been sacrificed to idols. We're not. It's just, it's so removed from our time and place today. But that doesn't mean that there isn't wisdom in there to say, hey, give grace to those that have no other choice. Give them love and don't pass judgment on them, because this is all they've got. That is still useful for us today. And so, yep, is this literally for you? Yes and no. But it's also, I know that it has wisdom in for today if we've got the courage to listen. excited to jump in?
Well,
Okay. Did I talk anybody out? Okay. I don't know if anybody was here that wasn't signed up or wasn't thinking about doing the class. I do have books. I only have 15. I don't know that everybody here got on the list. So if you're not, if I don't hand you a book and you are not on my list, let's talk if you need help getting the book. If you don't need help getting the book, we're gonna actually start it for Tuesday. Today this was just kind of to frame and maybe put a little scare in you about what's coming.
If I don't get a book, you're gonna be on my list.
Yeah,
put mine on there.
Christmas is coming.
Mine's in the mail,
Okay.
coming tomorrow.
We can share one.
Okay.
You know, Scott, when I first read Revelation, I was just a little shaver, probably 10, 11 years old. I thought it looked at it as a beacon of hope and a light. And I thought that Revelation was put at the end of the Bible for a reason. I didn't see it as doom and gloom.
Well,
Oh, this just
have you, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
I was gonna introduce you at the end. This is Jim's sister, Diane.
I'm Diane, I'm
This is
Meredith.
Meredith.
Hi, Meredith.
Scott, I need a
I
paper
feel
if
like
you got one.
maybe if you,
Thank you, sir.
there's a movie,
Okay.
so if you wanna do the short,
All right.
quick version of
So
Left
let's
Behind,
go
the
through this and
book.
we'll figure out
Yes.
books
Maybe
along the
if
way.
we just think about the
Um,
first part where.
So
once
at
we
the top
do
is
go,
my phone number if you don't
before
have
all
it,
that
my
stuff
email if you
Yeah.
don't have it,
Maybe
you're
we'll
welcome to
do
ask
some
me
work.
questions or anything that you're, or whatever, that, send me a joke about Revelation, it's fine too. So my hope, every week,
This is
I'm gonna actually
Meredith.
stop because, no, because there are people that are in class. I was gonna stop.
I'm sorry, I'll be quiet.
No, you're good. Is before each week, you need to read the book, which is called Breaking the Code, by Rick Metzger.
Tell me what you
It's like 2 chapters every week, and you need to read the revelation that goes with it, okay? Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes it's not bad at all. What I encourage you to do is, whatever translation you're using, all translations are gonna be fine here, and the more translations we have, it's gonna be better, because we're gonna look at specific words, as well, and your book says beast, but yours says man, and were they really a commentary on feminism, or whatever it was?
Why are you looking at me?
I wasn't, don't read anything into that. Keep a journal as you're reading, especially Revelation. If there's a phrase or something that jumps out at you, or an image that, I don't know what that is, I probably will not have the answer, but we can figure it out together, okay? At least what the common understanding of that is, or where it tends to be, okay? So this is the schedule. So if you can, for next week, we'll meet here again, 6:30. We're gonna read chapters 1 and 2 in this book, and Revelation, basically the first chapter of Revelation. So the light reading the first week. There's a preface in here too. I would recommend that you read it, but you don't have to. But I'd recommend it. And then we'll go through. The last class, if we go on the schedule, meets on July 4th. So I'm of the mind that we'll probably reschedule that along the way, but right now I left it as tentative so that we can see where we're at. We may double up depending on how well this goes. We may say, no, we need extra time. That's kind of where it is. I'd really hate to leave that one off because that's really where the good stuff is that end. That's the end of Revelation. So, but that's tentatively the schedule. July 4th is kind of a busy day for people. The week after, I'm at summer camp, so I don't know what we'll do, but this is the schedule along the way. The book itself is short. It's not too bad. He's a Princeton grad, so he's all right. He was actually a teacher, but I never took any of his classes, so that's where it kind of first got on my thing. And he goes through kind of verse by verse, talking about what some of the words might mean or whatever. So it's not a narrative like you'd read on M. Hamilton. It's a little heavier stuff, but I don't think it's inaccessible. So come to class with questions, come to class read and prepared, and we'll take it from there. Okay? Sound all right?
You got the
Alright.
books there with you then?
I do have books here. Yep. Yes,
Does it matter which you read first? Like, would it make more sense to read Revelation first or the book first?
I don't know. I'll let you kind of experiment and let us know next week. I think it just personal preference. Most of the Revelation readings, except for a couple weeks, aren't that big. So you could read them first, go to the book, and then read them again.
Okay.
But it depends on your time too. Which are available and interest and how deep you want to go.
What do we owe you for the books?
Took us 2 years to get.
Oh, books.
22
Yep.
chapters.
And if you don't have money to say, that's fine. So I'm gonna pass out to those that I know were on the list for books. And I'll take care of my, you just put the money on there, I don't even wanna touch it.
Okay, what are the books over
I
there?
don't even want to touch it.
No.
Thank you and your dirty money.